Was an underground city of giants discovered in the Grand Canyon? In the early 1900s, G.E. Kincaid was journeying down the Colorado River in a wooden boat alone looking for mineral. He was some 42 miles up the river from the El Tovar Crystal Canyon. When on the east wall of the canyon, Kincaid spotted stains in the sedimentary formation. They were located approximately 2,000 feet above the riverbed. There were no trails leading up to the location, but after a long hike, he finally made it to his destination. And much to his surprise, he discovered the mouth of a cave that was being hidden by a rock shelf so you couldn't see it from the river. As he approached the entrance, Kincaid noticed steps that led 30 yards down the side of the canyon. He concluded that where these steps ended must have been the water level at the time these caves were last inhabited. As he'd make his way into the entrance, he'd notice hieroglyphs on the walls. These markings would pique his curiosity, so he decided to enter the cavern. During this first trip, he went several hundred feet into the main passage, until stumbling upon a crypt where he'd discover mummies, one of which he'd stand up, illuminate with his flashlight, and snap a picture. After gathering a number of relics, Kincaid would make his way back down the Colorado River to Yuma. From there, he sent the relics to Washington, explaining his discovery. This is when the Smithsonian would get involved and explorations would be undertaken. The main passageway was around 12 feet wide, but it would narrow to 9 feet towards the end of it. 57 feet from the entrance is where the first side passages would branch off. On both sides there were a number of rooms about the size of an ordinary living room today, but some of the said rooms were almost 30 by 40 feet. These rooms had oval-shaped doors and were ventilated by round air spaces that went through the walls into the passages. These were believed to be the living quarters. The walls of the rooms were about 3 feet 6 inches in thickness. The tunnels were carved as straight and perfect as any engineer could plan. 100 feet from the entrance was the cross hall, which ran several hundred feet. It is here they would discover the idol, or the people's god, sitting cross-legged with a lotus flower or lily in each hand. The cast of the face seems oriental in origin, and it was carved by a very good hand. It is said that the attire is very well preserved, as was everything in the cavern at the time. Surrounding the idol were smaller ones, some beautiful in form, others depicting crooked necks and distortion, most likely representing good and evil. On the other end of the cross hall were tools and weapons made of copper. It's obvious these people knew the lost art of hardening such a metal. This method today is still sought by chemists and smiths. Along with these artifacts, they discover unique hieroglyphs, images like the ones you see here, depicting what seems to be a much larger human being handling a smaller one. Also discovered were urns and copper cups that originated from all over the planet. This has led experts to believe that multiple cultures may have been staying in this underground city. If this is the case, it's like nothing they have ever seen before. Another passageway would lead to a bunch of granaries, similar to that of Oriental temples. The granaries are rounded and seem to be constructed with an extra hard cement. On all the urns and surrounding all the doorways is the mysterious hieroglyphs. The origins at the time, they were not exactly sure where they came, but similar ones have been found in southern Arizona. The tomb the mummies were found in was one of the largest. It was so large that it actually had tiers, each level containing a number of mummies. The tombs were round and they had a little shelf out in front of them. These contained copper weapons and tools. The urns and weapons on the lower tiers of mummies were crude. As they got higher, they got more advanced, meaning that possibly this was around for generations. Upon excavation, they would realize that all the mummies in this chamber were male. They would come to the conclusion that these were the warriors of the tribe. But what struck the explorers as odd, among the discoveries, they would find no animal bones, skins, bedding, or clothing. Many of the rooms were bare, except for water vessels. That being said, one of the largest rooms they would discover was 40 by 700 feet. It is assumed that this was the main dining hall, where they would all gather to eat. Kincaid would go on to say that he believed these caverns could easily have housed up to 50,000 people. In his testimony, Kincaid would say there was one more place of interest. There was one chamber of which the passageway was not ventilated. And when they approached this said chamber, it was super dark and smelled of death. He would go on to say that their lights could not even pierce the gloom. And until better lighting was available, there was no way they could actually enter and discover what was in there. Some would rumor that it was just a room full of snakes, while others scoffed at this idea and believed that it was much more elaborate than that. What many don't know that G.E. Kincaid and S.A. Jordan, who was the Smithsonian director at the time, were actually following up the claims of an archaeologist that explored the region back in 1869. His name, John Wesley Powell. It's believed that it's possible that Powell discovered all of these said caverns before them. But this cannot be proven because it's said that during his expedition they saw a series of disasters, so all of his work was lost. So many scholars speculate that John Wesley Powell actually was able to explore the majority of these caverns. They also speculate that he may have named the high points in Haunted Canyon and Trinity Creek. Either that or he may have discovered the actual names of them. This is what lead many people to think that it's possible that multiple civilizations may have lived in these caverns. For example, the Shiva Temple, Tower of Ra. They also have the temples of Horus, Osiris, Isis, and the Tower of Set. These were all legendary figures of ancient Egypt and India, respectively. It's also good to note that Powell was actually the first director of the Smithsonian's Bureau of Ethnology. Along with that, he was the original founder of the National Geographic Society and a member of the Cosmos Club. There is a cave in the canyon named after him. Though it has not been proven, many scholars believe that based on the hieroglyphs and some of the idols within the caves, that the said caves were actually inhabited by giants, and that these giants may have even had humans as slaves, while others believe that the humans were not their slaves and that they all lived in harmony. But based on the elaborate megalithic structures and that the in-depth labor and work it would have took to build these caverns almost 1,600 meters into the mountain, that it was done by super advanced civilizations that were anywhere from 10 to 12 feet tall. So what happened to them? A notable legend is that of the Hopi Indians. Their legend states that their ancestors once lived in an underworld within the Grand Canyon, until a disconnection rose between the good and the bad, the people of one heart and the people of two hearts. As a result, Machado, who was their chief, counseled the people of one hearts to leave the caverns, but there was no way out. He then planted a tree, causing it to grow and pierce the roof of the underworld, so that the group of one heart could get out, and they did. They would then move up the river to Colorado, where they would plant grain and corn, establishing their new civilization. Today, this portion of the Grand Canyon is cut off to the public, and those that try to infiltrate will be met with armed guards. They've even gone as far as to establish a no-fly zone over the area. And it's not only the government that's involved, NASA is supposedly involved too. If let out, this would change the origins of the Egyptian cultures as we know it, changing the notion that these people couldn't travel by sea. So why did these people resort to the underground tunnels? Was it the flood or something else? Hopefully soon the truth will be revealed. Like and follow for more.